In this episode, we're continuing our travels up the Spanish Mediterranean coast from Garucha up to Cartagena. Traversing between the Costa de Almeria to the Costa Cálida.
Okay, we're leaving Garrucha. Very touristy place, tourist strip. Sorry, but the food was pretty bad. Fried fish, tourist style, very expensive restaurants. Quite an expensive marina. Very busy port. The marina is right next to working boats, offloading gravel, sand.
The port next to the marina is exporting gypsum, we found out, and they approximately export about 1 million metric tons annually, and it's mined in Sorbus. We've got an easy sail today of only 20 nautical miles, so it should take us about 5 hours to get up to Aguilas.
Not a lot of wind today, and what wind there is kind of going to be on our nose.
We want to go out to sea and come back in at a better angle. The angle we're thinking of for the AWA is about 60 degrees, and that's because we want to try the Jennifer out at 60. So far we've only been trying it at like 100 degrees and more, so downwind only. And we want to try going upwind a little bit. It's rated for up to 60 degrees, so we'll give that a try.
So a little engine check here. We're just doing 1,000 revs. This engine's just in idle pretty well. We spent the night on battery power. We didn't bother plugging in. We got 52 amps coming out of the solar. And we got just under 100 amps going into the battery. So 45 amps or so are coming from the engine plus the loads. And we might be running about 10 amps right now. We got autopilot on, but the sea is very flat. So maybe 10-15 amps of load. Navigation's also on, but radar is off. Let's be conservative, 20 amps of load. Solar panels, 50, alternators doing the rest plus the load, so about 50 from the twin alternators. And these are twin 115 amp alternators. Another view of the batteries. 100 amps going in, pretty well full, 98% full. And these are 900 ampere hour batteries. And as the batteries get really full, the MPPT and the regulator from the engine and the solar will each try to drop it. So the engine will drop out first, and then the solar will top it up to 100%. This does not overload engine alternator regulators. And the batteries can take any current. These lithium batteries could take 100 amps each and some. You can play rugby with lithium batteries and beat them up and discharge them and charge them as fast as you like. You don't need to babysit them like lead acid batteries. The only issue with lithium batteries is the initial cost. Better than AGMs or any kind of lead acid in every other way. Weight, cycling, reliability, power density, everything. Yum! Chick made the lunch.
We're only going to stay a couple days in Aguilas, but I've already determined that I'm going to dedicate my time to sewing a wind scoop. It's July in the Mediterranean and starting to get pretty hot and humid.
This is Juan Montiel from inside the marina. There's the entrance marked with green and red buoys. This is the visitors dock here right in the middle. So you dock up there first, and then visitors in 40-50 footers will be assigned along the back here, medi-mooring. So plenty of space right now, but it is just after the coronavirus lockdown, so it's not the busiest time of the season. Back there is a hotel, a bar. Didn't see many amenities like shops and stuff. I think this place is fairly isolated. And the best thing about this marina is that the Wi-Fi is excellent, 30 megabits per second, up and down. It's becoming as important as water and fuel and having a trash can these days.
It's time to start my wind scoop project. It's a type of lightweight funnel, which we put over the hatch to direct more wind into the boat to help cool it off on hot, sticky days. I start with a lightweight ripstop nylon and cut it up into the segments required for the wind scoop.
What you making? Another damn body bag? That material doesn't look like it's gonna hold me.
No, it's for a smaller body.
What are you gonna do now?
Put you on a diet.
Oh.
A wind scoop.
A wind scoop.
So now that all the segments are cut, I combine them using a French seam, which means that you sew the first seam with the back sides together and the second seam with the front sides together to hide the raw edges. Once the seams are complete, I reinforce every edge and seam with a heavyweight polyester canvas material. So now I'm doing the edging around the perimeter of the wind scoop.
You forgot what you were sewing there for a minute, didn't you?
There's so many sewing projects. On the ends of the heavyweight canvas reinforcement strips, I sewed in some buttonholes. If I need to stick a rope in there or a bungee or something, I can just cut that open and then stick it in there.
Oh, that's cool. So we'll see if the material holds the wind. If it doesn't, then you can reinforce it with a bolt rope.
Exactly, yeah. This is where I am so far.
Ah, it's like a mini Jenica. Pretty. Wow, it's quite big. Oh, that'll scoop a lot of wind. Hopefully, it's getting a bit toasty around here.
So I'll do the perimeter reinforcement next. The last phase of the wind scoop is to sew on nylon strap or webbing tabs at each corner. The tabs will be the attachment points above the forward berth connecting to the halyards and foresail above the deck and D-shackles at the deck level.
That looks really cool.
And then I've got white chalk to make a line for the cross that I will sew so I don't make a wobbly line.
That looks a bit complicated. I think I'll stick to sailing.
And that just gives it a little extra reinforcement.
So that's a white diagonal cross on a blue background. That's like the St Andrew's Scottish flag.
Only you would see it that way.
It's a bit skinny.
I've got my seams reinforced with a buttonhole pre-sewed in if you want to open that up and put
a cord in if we need to embed lines. Wow, serious wind scoop.
The final wind scoop is relatively large but works really well for us.
We're motoring and just a few knots of wind. The wind has been very unfriendly for sailing. Even the Jenica couldn't hold itself open, plus it was on the nose. So Jenica not much good when the apparent wind angle is less than 50 in 6 knots, let's say. So it needs, it's very happy at 8 knots in a 55 apparent wind angle. So it's round about that point of sail that's the decision point whether to pull it down or not. Now with tuna and mahi-mahi, you don't need the squiddy with the lure to actually sink. It's fine that it's skipping on the surface. We are about 10 miles out from Cartagena. We'll make a shallow turn in about 5 miles.
We're finishing up another easy sail, our last easy sail before we prepare to jump off to the Balearic Islands.
Coming into Cartagena, a big tanker here in the... We're coming into Cartagena. It's what looks like a big chemical plant, refinery, fuel depot, something like that.
This is an example of bad docking. We weren't sure of the exact location, which is a common problem when docking in an unfamiliar marina. Also, the dock was shorter than expected, so we weren't able to attach the breastline as we desired. And with the attachment so far behind the boat, our stern kicked out into the other slip. However, I chose to keep the tension on the line rather than allow the boat to float away from the dock while providing another line for the aft cleat, which brought our stern in. It wasn't a disaster by any means, but definitely not our best prepared docking procedure. Stumbling off the boat, we see another cat boat just like Chloe with a great name. We get in early enough to get the scooters out and have a look around in search for food. Our first impressions are that we instantly love Cartagena. The marina is located near Plaza Ayuntamiento, which has sculptures, modernist architecture, and the General Tourist Information Center. There are also several museums nearby, the closest of which is the Roman Theater Museum. We just got here 10 minutes ago. First impressions, 10 out of 10.
Look at that for architecture.
And then just a bit further on to Calle Mayor, or Main Street, which is the primary pedestrian street for shopping and dining, as well as more modernist architecture from the late 19th century, built from the riches of local mining exports from the late 1800s. There's a beautiful blue marble tile walkway along the length of the street, as well as restaurants, tapas bars, and shopping.
So we're having an absolutely superb red wine. We had to test a few first. Now we're having toasties, which is pork and red peppers with Emmental cheese and cream and honey and walnuts.
We're enjoying our discovery until Peter runs off to buy me an upgraded face mask.
Yeah, that's definitely an improvement.
I did not
And
buy this.
your whole attitude has just improved.
Why aren't you wearing it?
No, I got it for you, honey. It's a wee present.
Thank you.
I thought I'd upgrade you a bit. You remind me of your mum like that. Definitely.
I'm telling. I got up to the Conception Castle in Cartagena, and we'll ride down on the scooters.
You seem to be going up a lot. This is very up.
That's not that bad.
This is Cartagena from the perspective of a suspended birdcage. I feel a bit like a budgie.
The castle is on a hill which was previously a Moorish fortress, a Roman temple, a medieval castle, and the location of a siren which warned the population of bombing raids during the Civil War. You can still see the Romans' influence from the 1st century by visiting several restored architectural sites, including the Roman Theater, which is the most prominent Roman landmark for the city. There were beautiful fountains with birds of all types, and we were really happy to see the peacocks, not only because of their beauty, but because we could finally pinpoint where the sounds of the birds were coming from that we could hear from our boat throughout the day.
Here's a view from the very top of the castle, looking down into Cartagena Marina. That's Chloe right there. And this is the old city, and there is an old woman who's about to commit suicide. Don't do it! Don't do it. It's okay. Life is not so bad.
The earliest development of the castle was a Moorish fortress that was a typical alcazaba structure, meaning a defensive enclosure formed by a courtyard surrounded by walls and turrets. And then, as was common in the following times, the later Christian kings reutilized the structure as a keep. And then, after several renovations over the centuries, eventually in 1931 the fortress was declared a historic monument. And then after several more years of restoration and repurposing, was opened to the public in 2009 to add the castle as a tourist attraction. Just outside of the Naval Museum is the Port Plaza with several more sculptures and a small building with a model showing the industrial petroleum port, the marina, and the commercial cruise ship port. Starting in the 18th century, Cartagena became the leading naval port in the Mediterranean. A large naval shipyard was established there, as well as the capital of the Spanish Navy's Maritime Department of the Mediterranean. So we were really excited to see all things sailing in the Naval Museum that's been open since 1986.
I guess this was before DeWalt lithium battery power drills. These were the set of tools that the Spaniards used to use for ear piercing. So if you wanted a new set of earrings, you had to endure these tools. I can do this one, Dawn. No problem.
The first thing we saw was an impressive display of model ships from the 17th and 18th centuries that were massive. These are the types of ships Spain built in the era where they would form armadas to go conquer the New World. Cartagena has a very rich history. It was officially founded around 227 BC by the Carthaginians from the modern-day Tunis, Tunisia, or better known as Carthage in that time. It was a critical city for them as they were spreading out to the Andalusia region of Spain. Later, the Romans came through calling it New Carthage or Carthago Nova. Carthage grew in importance for the Romans as it grew its exports of silver and other natural resources. After the Romans, Cartagena was occupied and reoccupied almost 15 times up until the 18th century, when they were ruled by several different kings and embroiled in various dealings with major European players such as France and England, and in the 19th century lost the bulk of their colonies in the New World. And then in the 20th century, the more centralized democratic government suffers from two opposite ideas for post-monarchy Spain, and just before World War II, a 3-year civil war ensues, with Cartagena suffering greatly, as in the end, the opposing side wins, with Franco emerging as the dictator for almost 40 years. And then in the 1950s, Spain starts to transition back to a democracy and was admitted to the UN, the World Bank, and other European countries.
Dawn, I have great difficulty taking you seriously.
I know, everyone does. Thank you for that.
You're scaring children.
In the area of navigation, there are several binnacles on display with compasses as well as sextants and charts, but the highlight was one of the unique charts the museum has on display. It's a reproduction Catalan atlas of 1450, which was a type of medieval world map created in 1375 that's been described as the most important map of the Middle Ages. The Catalan atlas is the first believed to employ the use of a compass rose. It also had a separate page describing tides and astrology. There were walls of different types of artillery shells, a missile, and torpedoes on display, and even a World War II-era torpedo tube. However, the most notable item for the museum was in a separate area and closed to the public when we were there. Isaac Perel from Cartagena is credited with building the world's first battery-powered underwater vessel. The military submarine was launched in 1988 for the Spanish Navy, and some call it the first U-boat. It had one torpedo tube and 2 torpedoes and could travel at 3 knots, though had no way to recharge the batteries while underway. This particular torpedo tube from World War II era was just under 25 feet and weighed over 3,600 pounds. And its torpedoes could travel at 24 knots to 16,000 yards, up to speeds of 42 knots, down to 4,000 yards. My favorite exhibition was the mine laying display. It illustrated the detail of how a mine is connected to a sinker, which when dropped off the back of a boat separates from the mine as it fills with water. Upon separation, it drops a lead to a predetermined length, which will determine the mine's depth under the water. Once the lead line hits the bottom, the reel to the mine is locked, and the sinker falls to the bottom with the mine hovering at a fixed height above it.
In addition to mines, this museum had a really broad display of depth charge systems, big ones and little cluster depth charges used to sort out submarines.
Just an observation from these two museums that we visited, the Naval Museum and next the Military Museum, is that if they decide to show an exhibit, they will show every permutation and combination of every item within the collection. And it's even got them inducted into the Guinness Book of World Records, as you'll see in the next museum. There were also rooms with different uniforms, several paintings, and I quite liked all the different flags. They had different ones from all the regions and specific military service areas from within just the Navy itself. At the end, there was a wonderful mural across several walls and displayed several engagements alongside the typical military servicemen of their time. It was an excellent historical life-size pictogram of naval, amphibious, and peace operational milestones of the region. The mural started with the capture of Tunisia in the 1500s with King Charles V and followed the Navy through landings, battles, and conquests throughout Europe and the Americas, and finally the modern, more turbulent times when several far-reaching nations fought for independence back from Spain. We made it in from the rain just in time.
It's just lovely sitting here and had a nice little lunch and drinking some wine and it's pissing down. Fantastic.
Okay, new museum, new mask.
You look like a dog.
Okay, on the other side of town, we're now at the Military Museum to look at, I think, ammunitions.
Military things. Why do you want to see military things, Dawn?
They're usually the most interesting.
Oh, shells and bombs and noisy birds. The second museum, the National Military Museum, seems to focus on a broader range of military equipment, starting with artillery. So artillery involves all kinds of things, not only guns, but ranging equipment and radars and calculation machines, so early computers to calculate where the shell is going to land as a function of the distance and the charge that you put in the cannon. We saw the largest display and collection of shells that I'd ever seen, ranging in all types and sizes and shapes and forms. Machines that pack up charges of probably cordite or gun cotton to send the shells flying, and a vast collection of howitzers and cannons that occupied several floors of the building. In one section, the artillery was grouped into mobile or mechanized, I believe they're referred to artillery, on tank tracks and wheels that could be repositioned as opposed to towed or those that stay static in one place.
This military museum has a display of uniforms unlike any other we've ever seen. They have room after room of different varieties of all shapes and forms. They have a whole range of items out from different time periods, military branches, sub-branches, tactical, formal, diplomatic, various ranks for male and female, even separate displays for gas masks, hats, and bras.
The military bras put things in a whole new light to me.
They also have rooms dedicated to guns and rifles from all over the world, but the real surprise is the small-scale military model collection. They have several rows dedicated to the largest collection of transport vehicles, artillery units, earth-moving equipment, tractors, motorcycles, airplanes, tanks, and much more for different time periods, each listed by specific name and by country of origin. As a matter of fact, their collection of 2,815 military models, created by Francisco Sanchez Abril, made it into the Guinness World Record in 2012 for being the world's largest collection. We really enjoyed exploring and learning about the history of Cartagena, but it's time now to go. I make one last shopping trip and we complete our boat checklist, and I take some time out to practice traffic separation maneuvering. Tomorrow we are leaving the Spanish mainland coastline and sailing eastward to the Balearic Islands.